welcome to the next edition of the Hewlett-Packard Enterprise Voice of the Customer podcast series. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host and moderator for this ongoing discussion on digital transformation. Stay with us now to learn how agile businesses are fending off disruption in favor of innovation. Our next thought leader interview explores how digital disruption demands that businesses develop a new ideology of hybrid IT. We'll hear how such trends as Internet of Things, distributed IT, data sovereignty requirements, and pervasive security concerns are combining to challenge how IT operates. We'll learn how IT organizations are shifting to becoming strategists and internal service providers and how that supports adoption of hybrid IT. We'll also delve into how converged and hyper-converged infrastructures provide an on-ramp to hybrid cloud strategies and adoption. Here, then, to help us define a new ideology for hybrid IT, we're joined by Neil Thurston, Chief Technologist for the hybrid IT practice at Logicalis Group in the UK. Welcome, Neil.
Hi, Dana. Very nice to meet you. Thank you very much for having us.
I'm very glad you're here. Why don't we start at this notion of a new ideology? What's wrong with the old ideology of IT?
Good question. I think what we're facing now is the meeting of what we've done for an awfully long time versus what the emerging large hyperscalers within cloud, for example, have been developing themselves. And so the two clashing ideologies that we have are, do we continue with the technologies that we've been developing and the skills that and processes that we've developed in-house and push those out to the cloud, or do we adopt the alternative ideology that if we think about things such as Microsoft Azure and the forthcoming Azure Stack, that mean that those technologies are pulled from the cloud into our on-premise environments. So, the two opposing ideologies we have are, do we push out or do we pull in the technologies that allow us to operate in true hybrid environments? So by that we mean not having isolated islands of innovation anymore. So not just standing things up in hyperscaler clouds where you have specific skills, resources, teams and tools to manage those things. Moving forwards, we want to have consistency in operations, security, automation. We just want to have a single tool set or control plane that we can put across all of our workloads and data, regardless of where they happen to reside.
One of the things I encounter, Neil, when I talk to CIOs is that they're concerned that as we move to a hybrid environment, they're going to be left with having the responsibility but without the authority to control those different elements. Is there some truth to that?
I can certainly see where that viewpoint comes from. And, for a lot of our own customers, they exactly reflect that viewpoint. So this is where we are seeing a lot of organizations where they may have, certainly in the mainstream, just really dabbled and cherry-picked from service management, from practices such as ITIL. We're now seeing more pragmatic ITSM frameworks, such as IT for IT, come into the fore. And these are really more about, exactly as you say, pushing that responsibility level up the stack. So you're right in that people are becoming more of a supply chain manager, arguably, than necessarily the actual hardware facilities and everything else within IT. So there's definitely a shift towards that, but there are also frameworks now coming into play that allow you to deal with that as well.
Mm-hmm. And so the notion of shadow IT becoming distributed IT was once a very dangerous and worrisome thing. Now it has to be, in a sense, embraced and perhaps is even positive. Why should we view it as positive?
Yeah, absolutely. And the term shadow IT, it's controversial. Within our organization, we prefer to say that the shadow IT users are the digital users of the business. So you have traditional IT users, but you also have digital users. So I don't really think it's a shadow IT thing. I think it's just that they are a totally different use case for service consumption. But absolutely, you're right. They definitely need to be serviced by the organization. So they deserve to have the same level of services applied, the same governance, security, and everything else applied to them.
So it seems that the new ideology of hybrid IT is about getting the right mix, keeping that mix of elements under some sort of control. Maybe it's simply on the basis of management or an automation framework of some sort, and then allow that to evolve and see basically what happens. It's sort of an unknown area what this is going to be like in 5 years.
Absolutely it is. You're right. And I think it's important to possibly look at that there are two pieces of the puzzle. So there's the workloads, the actual applications and services, and then there's the data. And I think there's more importance on the data. Data is the new commodity, the new cash in our industry. So the data is the thing you want to protect. The actual workload service consumption piece is arguably the commodity piece that could be worked out anyway. So what you have to do moving forwards is, protect your data, but you can take that more brokering approach to the actual workloads. And if you can reach that abstraction, then you are fit for moving. You're fit for purpose moving forwards into the hybrid IT world.
So it's almost like we're controlling the meta processes over that abstraction without necessarily having full control of what goes on at those lower abstractions. But that might not be a bad thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to give you a very quick use case, we have a customer of ours. They, for the last 5 years, have been using Amazon AWS services. They were getting the feeling they were getting tied into the platform. So their developers over the years have been using more and more of the platform services, meaning they weren't, they weren't able to make all that code portable and take it elsewhere. This year, they've made the transformation, and they're actually decided to develop against Cloud Foundry, so an open platform as a service. They have instances of Cloud Foundry across Pivotal on AWS, also across IBM Bluemix, and across other cloud providers. So they're now coding once, deploying anywhere for the compute workload side, and then they've got a separate data fabric that regulates the data underneath. So, there are certainly emerging new architectures that help you to deal with this.
Interesting that you just described really an ecosystem approach. You're no longer seeing as many organizations that are supplier XYZ shops where 80 or 90% of everything would be one brand name. You just described really a highly heterogeneous environment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people have used cloud services, and cloud services, hyperscaler cloud services, have specific use cases. Typically, they're for the more temporary types of workloads, for example. Even companies born in the cloud, the typical examples of the Uber and the Netflix, reach those inflection points where actually having on-premise was far cheaper. It made compliance to regulations far easier, and so on. So, people are slowly realizing through what other people are doing, and also from their own good or bad experiences, that hybrid IT really is the way forwards.
And the good news is, if you do bring it back from the cloud or refactor what you're doing on premises, there's some fantastic new infrastructure technologies. We're talking about converged infrastructure, hyper-converged infrastructure, software-defined data center. Now we're talking here at HPE Discover about memory-driven computing and seeing some interesting new speeds and feeds along those lines. So on the economics and the price-performance equation, the public cloud is good for certain things, but there's some great attraction to some of these new technologies on-prem. Is that the mix that you're trying to help your clients factor?
Yes, absolutely. So, again, pretty much in parallel with the way that HPE approaches things, with the right mix. We see that there is always going to be, in certain industries, things like regulated data. Regulated data, really hard to control in a public cloud space where you have no real idea where things are. You can't really easily audit them, certainly physically. Having on-premise provides you with that far easier route to regulation. And again, with today's technologies, as we've mentioned, the hyper-converged platforms, for example, that allow us to really condense the footprint. We don't need these massive data centers anymore. We're working with customers where we've taken 10, 12 racks worth of legacy classic equipment, And with a new hyper-converged, we're putting in less than 2 racks worth of equipment here. So the actual operational footprint facilities cost is far less. And really, with the cost of that, it makes it a far more compelling story for those types of use cases than using public cloud.
And then you can mirror that small footprint data center into a geography if you need for requirements of compliance, or you could mirror it for reasons of business continuity and backup recovery. So there's lots of very interesting choices. So tell us a little bit, Neil, about Logicalis. I want to make sure all of our listeners and readers understand who you are and how you fit into helping organizations make these very large strategic decisions.
Yeah, well, at a top level, Logicalis is essentially a digital business enabler. So we take technologies across multiple areas and help our customers become digital ready. So that we cover a whole breadth of technologies. For myself, I'm looking at the hybrid IT practice, but we also then have the more digital focused parts of our business, such as collaboration, such as analytics. But for myself, the hybrid IT side, this is where we really are working with our customers through the pains that they have, through the decisions that they have to make. So very often, board level decisions are made that you have to have a cloud first strategy, and it's unfortunate when sometimes that gets interpreted as cloud first means cloud only. We have to go through. There is some process to go through of cloud readiness because some applications are not going to be fit for the cloud. Some cannot be virtualized. Most can, but there's always things like regulations. Certainly in Europe at present, there's a lot of FUD in the market, and there's a lot of uncertainty around EU GDPR, for example, so data protection. So there's a lot of reasons why we have to take a bit more of a factored, measured approach to looking at where workloads, where data is best placed moving forwards, and what the sort of operating models are that you want to operate.
And I think HPE agrees with you. Their strategy is to put more emphasis on things like HPC, those workloads that won't likely be virtualized, that won't work well in a public cloud, one-size-fits-all environment. Also factoring in the importance of the edge, even thinking about putting the equivalent of a data center on the edge for demands around information for Internet of Things and the analytics and data requirements there, as well as the compute requirements. So it's interesting. What's the relationship between HPE and Logicalis? How do you operate as an alliance or as a partnership?
We've got a very strong partnership. So we've got I haven't got enough fingers to count now. So it's probably around 15, 16-year-old relationship with HPE in the UK. And essentially, as everyone else, we started out selling servers and storage, but we've taken the journey with HPE and with our customers, because the great thing about HPE is they've always managed to innovate. They've always managed to keep up with the curve, and that's really enabled us to work with our customers and decide which the right technologies are. And that, like I say, today this is allowing us to enable us to work out the right mix for our customers of on-premise equipment, off-premise. And again, HPE ahead of the curve in various technologies in our area, and one of those is including HPE Synergy. So we're now talking with a lot of our customers about the next curve that's coming with infrastructure as code, and how we can leverage out what the possible benefits and outcomes will be of enabling that technology. But the on-ramp to that being currently that we're using a hyper-converged technology so that we can virtualize all the workloads, make them portable, so that we can then abstract them and place them either within platform services or within cloud platforms as necessary, as dictated by whatever our security, automation, commercial policies dictate.
Mm-hmm. Great. Now, getting back to this ideology of hybrid IT, when you've got disparate workloads and you're taking advantage of these benefits of platform choice and location and model and so forth, it seems to me that we're still confronted with that issue of I have the responsibility without the authority. What is it about management, and is there a approach that HPE is taking with management, perhaps thinking about OneView, that is anticipating that need and maybe adding some value there?
Yes, so with the HPE tool sets, we are able to set things such as policies, and really we see, today we're at platform 2.5 really, and the inflection that takes us onto the third platform is the policy automation, and this is one part that things like HPE OneView allow us to do across the board. So it's policies on our storage resources, policies on our compute resources, and again policies on non-technology. So quotas on public clouds, those types of things. So it really enables us to leverage the software-defined infrastructure that we've got underneath to set the policies that define the operational windows that we want our infrastructure to work in, the decisions that it's allowed to make itself within that, and we'll just let it go. This is where we really want to take IT, from high touch to low touch that we can do today with policy, and potentially in future with infrastructure as code to no touch.
Great. Do we have some examples, Neil? As you say, we're at 2.5 platform progression, heading rapidly towards platform 3. But do you have some examples you can point to, customers of yours and HPE's, and maybe you can name them, maybe you can't, and that's fine, but describe how a hybrid IT environment translates into enablement and business benefits and perhaps even economic benefits.
Sure. So, we're at Discover today, and one of our customers is taking one of the speaking slots. So, University of Wolverhampton is one of the customers we have where we have taken this journey with them, with HPE, with hyper-converged platforms, and created a hybrid environment for them. So today, the hybrid environment means that we are wholly virtualized on HPE hyper-converged platforms. We have rolled these solutions out across their campus. So nominally, where we would have had disparate clouds, we now have a single plane controlled by OneView that enables them to balance all the workloads across the whole campus, all of their departments. It's bringing them new capabilities such as agility, so they can now react a lot quicker. Before, a lot of the departments were coming to them with requirements, but those requirements were taking 12, 16 weeks to actually fulfill. Now we can do these things, certainly from the technology perspective, within hours, and with the whole process within days. So we're talking a factor of 10 here in reduction of times to actually produce services. And as they say, success breeds success. Once someone sees what the other department was able to do, that generates more questions, more requests, and so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Prophecy, if I can get my teeth in. We've working with them to enable the next phase of this project. The next phase of this project is to leverage the hyperscaler public clouds, but again in a more controlled environment. So today we've got them used to the platform. That's all bedded in. They're reaping the benefits of that from mainly an agility perspective. From an operational perspective, they are reaping the benefits of vastly reduced certainly system, but more importantly storage administration. So storage administration savings, they're 85% savings on their time required to actually administer the storage by having it wholly virtualized, which is fantastic from their perspective. It means they can concentrate more on developing the next phase, which is embracing or taking this ideology out to the public cloud.
Well, great. Let's look to the future before we wrap this up. What would you like to see, if not necessarily from HPE, but what can the vendors, what can the suppliers, what can the public cloud providers do to help you make that hybrid IT equation work better?
Good question. The honest answer, from my perspective and from a lot of our mainstream customers' perspective, they always seem that they're late into adoption, but they're late into adoption typically because they're waiting to see, what becomes either a de facto standard by winning in the market, or they're looking for bodies to create standards. And I think, interoperability between platforms and standards are really the key to driving better adoption. So today, AWS, Azure, etc., there's no real compatibility that we can take in there. We can only abstract things further up. This is why things such as, for me, platform as a service, things like Cloud Foundry, open platforms, really will, for those forward thinkers who want to adopt a hybrid IT, be the platforms of choice moving forwards.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like what you're asking for is a multi-cloud set of options that actually works and is attainable rather than not an ideology but a fantasy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's networking, Ethernet. We have a standard. Everyone adheres to it. It's commodity. Public cloud. Everyone says it's commodity. It is, but unfortunately, what we don't have is the interoperability of the other standards, such as we find in networking, for example. So, that's really what we need to really drive adoption or better adoption moving forwards.
Yeah. Well, great. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. We've been exploring how digital disruption demands that businesses develop a new ideology of hybrid IT. And we've heard how such trends as the Internet of Things and distributed IT and data sovereignty requirements, as well as pervasive security concerns, are combining to challenge how IT operates. And we've had the opportunity to learn how IT organizations are shifting to become strategists and service providers and work towards adoption of a true hybrid IT environment. So please join me in thanking our guest. We've been here with Neil Thurston, Chief Technologist for the hybrid IT practice at the Logicalis Group in the UK. Thank you so much, Neil.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
And thanks as well to our audience for joining us for this Hewlett-Packard Enterprise Voice of the Customer Digital Transformation Discussion. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host for this ongoing series of HPE-sponsored interviews. Thanks again for listening, and do come back next time.